I Hate Politics is a podcast about a human activity we love to hate. I'm Sunil Dasgupta. For those sending kids to college next year, it is crunch time. Many state schools have early action deadlines coming up in November. Certainly, the University System of Maryland does. Schools with early decisions have their deadlines coming up as well. And while you try to figure out how exactly to help your child complete the Common App, the various supplements from individual schools, and add up your cash and stock holdings to complete the FAFSA, the Federal Financial Aid Form, you are beginning to see your friends and neighbors posting on Facebook about how their kids have already started to receive acceptance letters. But don't panic. To help you through the home stretch, to help you think about the dilemmas of whether your child should go test optional or submit test scores, the difference between early action and early decision, and much more. We have this week UMBC's Director of Financial Aid and Scholarships, Andrea Cipolla, making her third annual college application time appearance on the show. And after 2 years of FAFSA delays, it seems forms are being processed on time this year, despite the massive reductions in the workforce at the U.S. Department of Education, the federal agency responsible for managing the FAFSA. For more breaking down college financial aid with Andrea Cipolla, stay with us. Full disclosure, UMBC is my employer as well and supports I Hate Politics.
I Hate Politics is brought to you by UMBC's Political Science Program, where you'll learn to shape public policy, impact communities, and function at the center of modern society. Learn more at shadygrove.umbc.edu.
You save yourself, but don't let me go, don't let me go.
I Hate Politics is a podcast about our neighborhoods, workplaces, schools and streets, and our local governments as they function in diverse and democratic societies. This means our politics are messy, dirty, sometimes corrupt, with often self-serving politicians. But no matter how much we may hate politics, we are never exempt from it, even when we refuse to participate. In fact, the purpose of politics is to keep society functioning, precisely when we don't agree with each other, like now. Music for this episode comes from Drew Pictures and the Lead Extras, an indie pop rock band based in Rockville, Maryland. Andrew Glore on vocals and keys, Brian Wolf on guitar, and Josh Wilson on drums. The songs come from their album Cats on Santorini. You can find their music at drewpicturesmusic.com. Andrea Cipolla, welcome back to I Hate Politics.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It is college application season, and at least in Maryland, all the public schools have their early action deadline, November 1st. What should families and students be thinking about right now?
Well, definitely knowing, which schools you want to apply to. I know that a lot of the schools are still test optional. So depending on whether you want to submit your SAT scores or just go with your GPA, it is public record of what the average SAT score is at each college. If your SAT scores are above that average, high school guidance counselors are saying, yes, go ahead and submit your SAT scores. If it's below the average, depending how far below, you may be better off going test optional.
If they are too much below the average, it's not probably worth applying. Is that generally the
SAT scores may mean more if you're going into a STEM major, but if you're going in as an arts or maybe humanities, a higher SAT score may not mean as much.
One thing I've heard parents talk about is the impact of sending or not sending SAT scores on scholarships?
So for my school, we don't look at whether the student submitted the SATs or not. We actually calculate the scholarship both ways, as if the student was just test optional or whether they submitted their test. And we give them the best scholarship either way. I'm not sure how other schools look at it. It also depends on how much money they may have to spend.
All right. What are some of the big errors students and families make?
One of the biggest errors they may need to know about is the difference between early action and early decision. So early decision means you are applying to the school, and if you are accepted, they expect you to accept that admissions offer and not apply to any other school. Whereas early action, you can apply early and they allow you, they tell you you're admitted. And generally for early action, if you apply and are admitted earlier, you have a better chance of scholarships. Whereas if you apply regular admission, some of those monies may have already been expended. But if you're admitted early action, you still have until May 1st to make a decision on whether you want to go to that school or not.
What if that school does not give you the aid that you're hoping to get in order to attend?
That's the gamble. Early decision really is a binding application, and you're not going to know if you're going to have financial aid, especially the federal aid to go with it, for months. If cost really is a decision point on which college you go to, early decision may not be the best option.
I don't know very many families myself who will say, oh, it doesn't matter how much it costs.
And I was surprised when, looking at my daughter's friends who were applying to these schools, it really didn't matter. They were going to go to their first choice no matter what.
We give kids the notion that you should go to your dream school. But I have found that to be completely wrong because, first of all, you're committing yourself to a large amount of debt if you don't have the money put aside. And then it's not like undergraduate education differs that much that you are not going to get a good experience. I think perhaps it does matter, size does matter or location does matter. I can understand those things. But if you're choosing between UMD and UMBC, for example, I'm not sure. We are both parochial, I guess, but
I agree, and that when I am counseling students, I really have tried to explain that a math degree at an in-state school is just as good as a math degree in an out-of-state school. And a lot of it depending on their major. Unless a particular school has a major that they are the top school that has that particular major, and that's where you think you need to be for your career. For the most part, for the average American and average student, going in-state is usually always the better financial decision than going to an out-of-state school.
But I don't even know what case there is to say that you have to go to the top school in your major, even at the cost of $80,000 a year or whatever it is.
I agree. I know a lot of parents have really gone into debt to give their student what they wanted.
What are people doing wrong in terms of not being able to get the greatest financial aid or not putting in the right information? The FAFSA is simplified now.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Right? It asks fewer questions. It grabs your tax return from IRS directly. But they ask you about cash. What is that number? If you have a 529, is that in?
Yes, 529, they are reported on the FAFSA because it is considered an asset. Starting with 2425, a 529 plan that was owned by a grandparent was no longer considered a parental asset. That simplified the application process a lot. But if you have a parent who owns a 529 plan, that is included on the FAFSA.
So generational wealth is okay. This is wild.
Yeah. So, and then, they're also going to want to know, what's in your cash and checking at that time, that day.
That day mean day of submission, right?
The day of submission, yes. Now, we have seen families who, especially, I think it was the year we had the really bad hurricane in this area. Well, they had gotten a lot of insurance payments to help with their houses.
Mm-hmm.
So when they filed the FAFSA, it looked like they had a lot more money than they really did because they were still doing all of the repairs. In those situations where it's like it's a one-time payment, it's not something that we're going to have all the time. We had to use it to repair our roof or fix our deck, whatever it might have been. That would be considered a special circumstances, and we would take that into consideration and adjust.
How would you take that into consideration? I mean, should families not add it in, or should they add it in and somehow indicate? But there's no place to indicate that they're special.
They would add it in, but then they would need to contact their financial aid office at the school that they're going to attend to be able to do that. So it's considered professional judgment on part of the financial aid administrator to take that into consideration.
Oh, so you fill out the FAFSA form and then you call the school, the financial aid officer, and go, look, this is high because I got this one-time payment for, my roof blew off and I have to fix it. And we are living in a rental right now. That's the money.
Yes, and we can then go in and adjust the FAFSA application. I do not advise that you not include it because technically that could be considered fraudulent information that you're submitting.
What about like upcoming healthcare expenses? So, you need a hip replacement or, some, cancer treatment or whatever it is. Can you call the school and go, I have this coming up?
Yes, and we can take that into consideration as well. And we can do a few different things. So if a family's already at that 0 student aid index, there really isn't much that we can do to get them more grant aid or make them eligible for additional Pell Grant, things like that. But, if say, we could increase the cost of attendance if they needed help with borrowing a parent loan, to help with some of those expenses, things like that. If they do have a higher SAI, we can actually take that amount. And again, professional judgment is very individual depending on the school and how they treat certain expenses. But at my school, we can take that and we can look, okay, so they have this much that they've got to pay out of pocket. And we do look at out of pocket. So we want to know how much is the insurance truly going to pay and how much are you going to have to pay out of pocket. So what they pay out of pocket, we can say, well, that is money that they don't have from their income to pay towards college. So we will reduce their income by that amount that they have to pay out of pocket for medical expenses.
And this has to be done school by school by school.
School by school by school. Yep.
I did not know this was possible.
Oh, yes. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can take into consideration. If you're paying private secondary tuition for a sibling, or if there's an additional family member that's going to college the same time as your student, we can look at that.
Apparently, the new FAFSA said that they are not going to take siblings into consideration.
Correct. But as professional judgment, a school can look at it if it is truly a hardship for the family. So the family needs to say, this is a hardship because ABC. We can do that And again, it's on a case-by-case basis. We can't say, okay, every student that has a sibling in college, we're going to automatically do this for you. You have to collect documentation. We have to look at the reasoning. We have to look to see, how much it is and how much it does affect the family income. And then we can make a determination of whether we're going to adjust the FAFSA as professional judgment.
When should families be making these calls?
That's a difficult question because I know, especially for incoming students, they want to know right away how much they're eligible for. But financial aid offices usually don't start looking at these processes until maybe March or April for the next year. And it's a lot of information that they're collecting. So I would recommend that students have their schools narrowed down to maybe 1 to 3 colleges at most to do this process. You don't want to do it for all, 20 universities that you've applied for because it's a lot. It really is a lot. And hopefully, the school will be able to give you a decision before that May 1 decision deadline. They may not, though. And that's where the challenge is. So, working with each institution's financial aid office, trying to, make sure that when the process and the forms are available, that they do it as quickly, but, they can definitely start planning ahead and gathering any documentation that they may need.
And when you say call, do you literally mean call or email is fine?
You can email.
Maybe you can clarify what should be included in cash on hand and what should be included in property so that people know.
They're looking for what other assets a family has to be able to help with their college expenses. So that's why they ask for their cash and checking, and then business investments. And if you have any other property investments outside of your primary home, like if you have a vacation home somewhere, they're looking for that as an asset that you could borrow against.
Say somebody says, I have $50,000 in my bank. What does that mean versus somebody that says I have $75,000? What difference does it make?
It's going to make a small difference. The person that has $75,000 compared to 25,000 is going to have a bit higher SAI because they have more set aside.
Explain what SAI is.
SAI is the Student Aid Index. That is the number that the FAFSA calculates, and it helps in determining whether a student is eligible for the federal Pell Grant and any other need-based aid, such as subsidized Stafford loan, federal work study, and a lot of colleges and universities will also use that number to determine if they're eligible for any of the institutional need-based grant funding.
And that number used to be known in the previous form of FAFSA as the estimated family contribution.
Correct, the EFC.
What is the difference?
Mostly the verbiage, because the EFC, or expected family contribution, was not generally an attainable number that families could actually contribute.
Yeah, ask me about it.
Yeah. So I think changing the name to the Student Aid Index made it clearer to what it really was. It was a number to help determine if you're eligible for need-based aid versus what a family was expected to be able to pay.
A lot of these problems are obviously in the middle class. Are you seeing folks in that middle income range apply for in-state schools at much higher numbers than if you were, say, in a lower income and then you would apply for out-of-state schools?
Honestly, I don't see that. I see students in all financial aspects applying to out-of-state schools. We have our Pell eligible students. They're out of state. They're applying to UMBC. And we actually have a calling campaign, and we call them and we say, do you realize how much this is really going to cost you coming out of state? And are you prepared, and your family prepared, to pay this extra money? I'm very proud of UMBC to allow us to do that, because could affect our yield and students could decide not to come. But we would rather a student not come to the university than get there in their first year and realize their family really can't do this. And then they either have to transfer to another school or they are borrowing tens of thousands of dollars of debt each year.
Okay, let's talk big picture things about the FAFSA form itself. The Department of Education has, seen a lot of firings and is much smaller today. What are your expectations with respect to how that process is going to play out for you?
So I think on the student side, they're not really going to see much difference. I know that the Department of Ed has maintained staffing for FAFSA processing and processing of files that we have to send back and forth for students. So disbursement of funds to institutions hasn't been delayed at all. What changes they may see is if they actually have to call about a question on the FAFSA to the Department of Ed, it's going to be even more difficult to get through than it was before. So, our financial aid administrators are trying across the nation to try to help with that and, help with any questions that the students may have on that side. Also, I know we're usually talking about students coming in to the university, but student loan payments are still due, even though the federal government is shut down. So, they haven't stopped collecting their money.
So yes, I think this is also we are talking about incoming students, but also, returning students. It's the same thing, right?
Correct. Yes, same thing.
Are you expecting that those financial aid decisions to be made on time?
Yes, the FAFSA opened October 1st. It actually opened a week early. So the last week of September, it opened, but, officially October 1st, students have been submitting their FAFSAs, I think nationally at a higher rate, but that's kind of misleading because it's been so late in the past 2 years. They haven't made that October 1st opening deadline. So, we'll see probably around December or January if we're still ahead of the game nationally of students filing their FAFSA. But I do recommend that they file it as soon as possible. Thanksgiving break or winter break, when they don't have classes, they don't have to worry about tests or anything like that. You've got time to sit down, do that FAFSA, get it out of the way. You want to make sure that you're hitting priority filing dates for the state and for each institution that the student is applying to.
Okay, what is this state priority date?
The state priority date is March 1st. So you don't want to file on March 1st. They have to have the FAFSA in their office on March 1st. So if it takes Department of Ed a day or two to process that, you need to plan ahead and you need to file that FAFSA earlier.
Is it a day or two or is it a week or 10 days?
I've seen FAFSAs being processed within 2 to 3 business days at the most, unless there is some type of issue that they are having.
In Maryland Public Schools, we talked about the early action. That requires a FAFSA submission at that time, right? So before November 1st.
No. So early action is only about admissions. So it is just you're applying to the admissions early. You're getting first look at whether you can be admitted or not, and for institutional scholarships are looked at that time.
And that is not at all about the FAFSA.
Not about the FAFSA at all. So the FAFSA. So for our school, we have a March 1st priority filing date as well. And that's mostly for our supplemental educational opportunity grant, which is still federal money, but we have a very, very small bucket of money. So we try to give it to students who apply as early, earlier than waiting until last minute. There are some schools I know who have a filing priority date of February 15th. So some may also have February 1st, especially since the FAFSA actually opened on October. So students and families, they definitely want to check each school and see when that filing priority date is for their institutional aid and get it submitted as early as possible. So that's why I say if they file it by New Year's, they pretty much hit every school's priority filing date.
What percentage of students qualify for Pell Grants?
So at UMBC, we have about 36% of our students are Pell eligible.
Is that the same system-wide in Maryland?
I don't think so. Some schools have higher, some schools have slightly lower.
Do you have a sense of where the national average is?
The national average for undergraduate students who are Pell eligible is approximately 31 to 34%.
Do you have a number for what Pell eligible looks like? I mean,
So
it's hard. I know it's hard, but
generally, if you have an SAI that's below 7,000, you may be Pell eligible for usually.
what does 7,000 mean in terms of income?
Depends on family income, how many family members are in the household, age of the oldest parent, because they want to know how close to retirement they are, because if they're closer to retirement, they get a higher income protection.
How close to retirement do they need to be?
I get it. It's only a percentage. So I can't say that it makes a huge difference, but my point is there's a lot of different things that go into the calculation.
Some schools ask for supplementary information using what is called the CSS.
Yes.
What does it stand for and what does it do?
CSS is a form, it's managed by the College Board, and it does ask for a lot of the same things that the FAFSA asks for, but then it goes in a little bit deeper. So the FAFSA is going to ask you, information about the parent that you're living with. So if you have a split family, a divorced parents who have remarried, they want to know the income information of both parents, regardless if they're married or not. These schools that use the CSS profile are schools that have very large foundations and endowment monies. So they are looking at even more detailed information to make sure that the funding is going to needy students.
Okay, we've talked about a need a lot. What about that set of students who are not even close to Pell standards, but in the middle? And the expectation is that if your family income is $180,000 a year, you have to pay $40,000 in tuition. I am not sure how 25% of a family income can just be plucked out like that. And I'm talking, this is gross family income. Right? It's not even like the net in hand.
That middle income families, that we try to help them a little bit more. Again, there's just not enough funding, especially within Maryland. It's a lot about determining if a student should live on campus. Can they commute? Is there a way that we can reduce costs at the university?
What do you consider to be middle income?
For me, middle income is usually, anywhere from 80,000 to maybe 150,000. It depends on how many people are in the family. And that's the hard thing with this, is it's not a clear-cut formula where, well, if you make this much money, then you're automatically considered. But I would say even that is lower middle class these days, especially in Maryland, where cost of living is higher.
Well, the difference is location. $150,000 in Oklahoma is really different from $150,000 in Maryland.
True.
But can we take that into account?
The FAFSA does take where you live into consideration.
By state or by zip code?
By state.
I could live in Allegheny County and 150 would be like being in Oklahoma. And if you live in Montgomery County, 150 is barely doing much for you here.
I know.
In-state tuition in at least Maryland public schools, but also I believe many, many public schools, hasn't really gone up that much.
States, I think, they try to protect in-state tuition. When you look at out-of-state tuition compared to in-state tuition, it is more than double or triple the in-state amount.
I want to ask in this context what we do for international students. I mean, First of all, are you getting
Mhm.
fewer applications?
We are definitely seeing fewer applications on the graduate student side. We're just having trouble getting their visas completed in time. But we didn't have much of a change in the undergraduate side. Not sure why. International students, they are assigned an out-of-state tuition. And unfortunately, there just are not a lot of resources available for international students in terms of aid. They're eligible for scholarships. They do have some loan options.
Are there anything else? Is there anything else that you would want families and students to keep in mind as they navigate these several weeks now?
Just stay on top of things. One of the other things to consider is going to community college your first 2 years. You're getting all of your general education credits out of the way. A lot of the Maryland community colleges work with Maryland state schools and private schools, and they have articulation agreements and they know what's going to transfer. It saves a lot of money. And then your last 2 years, you transfer in and you can still be, you're still getting your degree from that 4-year school. You're still going to say you're going to get a bachelor's degree from University of Maryland or UMBC or Towson.
And during community college, obviously, you're living at home and not on campus, which can really bring costs down.
Correct. I can't express enough in like external scholarships. It's like looking for a job, looking for all these extra funds out there. So any scholarship search engines that you can find, like scholarships.com is a good one. Go to your church, see if they have a scholarship. Pretty much every chain restaurant has a scholarship. Taco Bell, McDonald's, Chick-fil-A.
Andrea Cipolla, thank you for clarifying this black box of financial aid and scholarships.
Oh, you're welcome.
I'll add a link in the show notes to UMBC's external scholarship finder if anyone is interested. That's all for this episode of I Hate Politics, where we aim to stem the decline in local news by working with community voices. Don't forget to tune in to our Tuesday morning news analysis. I Hate Politics is produced by me, Sunil Dasgupta, with support from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. I direct UMBC's political science program at the universities at Shady Grove in Montgomery County, where, among other things, we explore and learn about politics, government, and society close to home. Music for this episode comes from Drew Pictures and the Lead Extras, an indie pop rock band based in Rockville, Maryland. Andrew Glore on vocals and keys, Brian Wolf on guitar, and Josh Wilson on drums. The songs come from their album Cats on Santorini. You can find their music at drewpicturesmusic.com. If you want to share your music on the show or know someone else who might want to, please email us at producer@ihppod.org. I hope you'll subscribe and share the podcast as we bring you stories about politics close to you and to your home. See you next time.
I'm your mirror, mirror hanging on the wall.